Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, in my continuing series on Gnostic type movies that give you interesting and thought-provoking philosophy, of course, one of the classics is The Circle of Iron, written by Bruce Lee, with some help from James Colburn and others who were great friends of his. And Colburn was apparently a student of Asian philosophies, which a lot of people were in the 60s when all of this was very popular. This, of course, was produced after Lee's death, and it is still available. I mean, you can actually get this movie on Blu-ray, and I do recommend that because there's a lot of extra here. There's a commentary with some very fascinating information in it. You get commentaries by the actual director, who is Richard Moore, and there's an interview with David Carradine. There's also the co-producer, and a really interview with Sterling Silliphant, who is a big supporter of martial arts and Asian philosophy, and a really good little mini interview with Joe Louis, probably one of the, if not the greatest martial art fighters there were out there. And he was a champion of he started full contact karate competitions, and was a fairly good friend of, apparently, of Bruce Lee. They worked out together. There's some film with him, etc. And Bruce Lee actually called Joe Louis the greatest fighter that he knew. And I tend to believe that. You got to remember that we can always get into the debate of all those things. There's no discounting that Bruce Lee was a fantastic martial artist, but we don't know how much of a, quote, fighter it is. There's a difference between technical moves and physical combat. But whatever, we won't get into that debate. It's always nice to have, again, this is kind of in the Matrix-esque reality. It's a semi-fantasy going through a fantasy world, but it's basically taking what would be considered a Westerner, a Bavarian, gotta say, man, kind of a Westerner, and then taking him through the thoughts and challenges of what the more intellectual facets and the many challenges of life that we go through. And that's exactly what this movie does. And it takes you through different realms, different adversaries talking about the trickster reality of certain concepts, the reality of how sexuality bothers you, and bringing you on the quest of finding the answer to what the meaning of life is and who controls life. And the ending of this movie is quite fascinating. And I'm sure, Bruce Lee was never very original. And that doesn't mean anything. Like everybody in life, nobody's really all that original. You're taking spins on everything else. So you look at the knowledge that's out there. You're staying within a larger box. And then you put your interpretation in it. And that's how life works with everything. There are very few things that pop out of nowhere. It's all built on everything, just like all the garbage science we have from the scientists that we have out there. None of these things are new. Quantum physics isn't new. It didn't come from the 1920s. It goes back and back, just like I believe black holes were talked about in the 1800s. So none of this is new, but then we get somebody that comes in there and they write a book on it, and then people give them credit for it when they were just building on something else. That's how life is. Very few things are actually invented by a particular person, or there's a new concept. Just like patents and everything else that are out there. Well, generally they're variations of something else. So they'll make a variation of an original patent, but they've done something slightly different. That's how life is. So I don't want to criticize Bruce Lee for that. So this was a fantastically well-written movie, and it was well-produced and well put together on a very inexpensive budget. But it looks excellent. I believe it was filmed entirely in Israel, which was very new at that time, and one of the few things that was filmed at that time in Israel, and even to this day. And it had, I believe, everybody in this did an excellent acting job as well. Now, the main parts are played by, who was very popular at that time after coming off of the Kung Fu television series, David Carradine, um, who was kind of into this stuff and kind of looks good doing his martial arts. Um, and I thought he did an excellent job there. And he played many different parts within it. It also has some other great actors in it. Eli Wallach, Christopher Lee. So it had a great little cast there that all played excellent parts and gave excellent performances. Also, the main antagonist, the Westerner, Cord, I thought this guy did a good job. And a lot of people don't give him credit that he isn't a great... But, it's always difficult to play the hero role. I think he did quite well. And I think it's unfortunate that he didn't get more roles in the future. Similar to Joe Louis, because he caused some trouble on a set, not wanting to eat some bad food, that they blackballed him. But Joe Louis did work on this movie. He had to choreograph many of the stunts because this was when martial arts movies were not filmed before, and the director didn't do a very good job. So Joe Louis states, and I believe it. So they had to go and refilm a lot of the fight scenes, which I do believe. It's difficult to do action. It's difficult to do martial arts if you've never done that before. Now, this, who I'm not too familiar with, this Moore's work, had done other major films. And other than the fight scenes, it seems to be done well. But he didn't really have any good background in that. So it's a very interesting backstory, and all of this is on the Blu-ray, and I always love to get commentaries and listen to the backstory of everything. These tend to be more interesting and informational and profound than the actual movies themselves. So it goes into this Zen philosophy. Now, originally it was called the Magic Flute, and this is part of the philosophical understanding that goes with this. Because the main mystical man of this is playing the flute. And it goes into all of these very martial arts philosophical understandings that, very few people know about. I remember when I was trying to get into martial arts as a youngster in Los Angeles, that I went to a whole bunch of martial arts studios. And they were nothing more than a bunch of punchers and kickers. Whether it was kung fu or not, they ran their studios much like a drill sergeant's a way of doing things. And I really couldn't find anybody that had any kind of spiritual aspects. And, once you do take this for 10 years, we talk about, grass growing on the side of the wall. So the whole idea is that, so you're not going to find that. And the average instructor and the average martial artist is nothing more than a puncher and a kicker. And it's as simple as that. They're into it because they're fearful cowards, or they're into it to hurt people for their own personal deviant reasons. And we don't really know the level of any of these people. I mean, you put a shingle out and you say you're a martial artist. What does that mean? So, and basically people are going there to learn something, so mostly out of fear and wanting to be able to protect themselves and so forth. And martial arts training in general is kind of a joke. Doing katas, movements like a ballet dancer or a dancer or whatever it is over and over again, that ain't real fighting. Because when you get in a fight, remember, you say, hey, wait here, man. I got to go put my shoes on and get my little pajamas on, and I'm going to come back and we'll fight like that. Or you see those idiots who train, they take their shoes off when they want to fight. So good luck doing that while you're taking your shoes off. I'm going to kick you right in the head. So the whole idea is that these are just nonsense, and none of these studios teach fighting. It's basically nothing more than a bit of exercise, which has pseudo abilities that you may be able to use when you have your pajamas on. So the whole idea is it's just ridiculous. So, and I don't know any school that really teaches that unless you're going into more of a combatant school where you're learning how to fight in a more mercenary type situation or military conflict. So these things are all comical. Now, you got to remember that in Asia, they do wear little goofy shoes like that. That's what they wear. So, but you don't wear that in America, and you're not going to wear that in many different climates where it's either too cold or too hot. But that's another thing. So the whole thing is that you go through these different stages, and each one have their interesting. They show you the seduction of sex and the seduction of all of that as that becomes a problem in your life. It goes into how there are people that tend to be egotistical approaches things, and they're all mouth and no fight. And so Cord, the hero here, the Westerner, is going through these different challenges and how those things operate. And it's very interesting. It starts off, and Roddy McDowall was in this. So it had quite a nice little cast, and I think that all added to the charm of this film, and just shows you if the story is good, you don't need a lot of money. And you have some interesting backgrounds that go with it, and you've got a great film here. So this is highly recommended, and of course the ending is fantastic as well. I'm not sure if I should give it away or not, but it's very interesting that in the end you went to the Great Wise Man, and there was a book there, and the book actually would tell you what the meaning of life was, and who was in control of it, and what was going on, etc. So I'll let you watch the movie to experience that. So this is one of these must-have type films. You know, there's probably 10 or 20 must-have type films. Apprentice to Murder, what a fantastic film that gives you the occultist, the occult scientist view of something, of what your world looks like. Even the Shock to the System, which shows you how a modern person would deal with a magical mind and how they would go into personal situations. These are fantastic films that tend to relate much more to life. Now, the problem with this film, again, is it is kind of in this mystical world. So it doesn't equate to the frontline type of films that I prefer, like the Billy Jack films, which show you what you have to contend with, not only for yourself trying to reach states of gnosis, but all the corruption and evil that's out there, and the reason why this plane of existence is hell. When you get to science fiction, like The Matrix does, and even this to a certain degree, you start losing contact with the real world, and it becomes this mystical comic book anime reality, and this hurts the reality of what's going on in life. So it's very important to keep that in mind when you're watching something like this. But this is a fantastic film. As I said, it's readily available. You can get it on a nice Blu-ray. And this is something you should pull out every few months and watch it. And as I said, the commentaries on their own, and I'm sure you can probably get this on eBay at a discount price, but it's fairly inexpensive, what I've seen, about $15 for the Blu-ray. You may be able to get cheaper than that. And the commentaries themselves, which are extensive, I think it's about 2 or 3 hours worth of additional materials. And of course, there's a commentary through the entire film by the director, is just a little treasure that everyone should look at. And one of those special things, and it's good to watch this with others and talk about it and go into the important things of life instead of into the garbage that is so prevalent in the society, particularly on common movies. So this was extremely well done, from all the movie aspects to the writing and everything else. So it really is a little treasure. Check it out and do enjoy.